So this game plays a pretty old trick. And that is when you don't show the face of the protagonist, and by doing so, you are hiding something. Um, Now, this is a very commonly done thing. Even the Matanui Online game, of all things, hides the face of the protagonist and does a somewhat epic reveal of their face in the final hours. Well, I mean that game is only 3 hours long, so the final moments of the game. And how it disguises it, of course, is you think that you're just a self anonymous insert. That it's kind of when they're talking to you. The reason why the character's not given a name is because it's supposed to be like you are in the universe yourself. And it turns out no, actually there is a player character. There is a main character that has a name. But anyway, this particular game, though, decides to do some. There's always. You can get away. It's so common to do this, but you can get away with it because sometimes by kind of messing with it a little bit. Usually by making the player think that you actually have shown them the protagonist's face, using, say, a flashback or something. So they think they've seen it and don't think you're actually hiding it, even though you are. In this particular case, how it's hidden is there's like two separate instances. The 2017 instance, as I call it, and the 2034 instance. And in each case, you have someone named the name of the other character, that is either Takeshi or the kid, and you can see their face, you can see their sprites. And so you assume because you've seen their sprites in like the other side, that you've seen their face, even though you have not seen their face in their own side. It's very well done. I haven't seen anything done quite like that before, done quite that way. And up until even after the kid seeing his quote unquote face in the mirror, I still didn't realize what was happening. Even though you could have guessed it before the reveal. There are ways to do so. But I failed to do so. So it kind of worked on me. So just kind of like to illustrate this. So looking at the album, Tsugumi in particular, this CG has Takeshi in it. Look what color Takeshi's hair is. It's black. The Takeshi whose sprites you see, his hair is a reddish brown color. You gotta pay attention to those details and actually take them seriously, right? You might see this, you might go, oh well, she looks darker color because it's wet. Like most people, including my hair, for example, if you get it wet, it looks much darker colored than if it's dry. This one has Takeshi in it, but you can't see his face. He's cropped out of the picture. This CG has Takeshi in it, but the top of his head is cropped out of the picture. And the amount of head you can see, you can't really tell very much from. So, the CGs that Takeshi is in, they tend to crop out his face or crop him out. Oh, this one also has Takeshi in it, but he's cropped out. And it would actually, in hindsight, this seems kind of unusual because you wouldn't ordinarily take a picture with half a person in it. Or you wouldn't draw a picture with two characters in it and intentionally crop out one of them. It's a very weird thing to do. I guess you could save work. You don't have to put the effort drawing in the other character. But it's not. It's as a finished product, it's kind of bizarre. But now in hindsight, I look back at this and I go, well, in hindsight, I didn't think it was very bizarre at the time. I didn't take notice of this pattern. You could have took notice of it and go, well, it's weird how they crop him out. If both people are supposed to be in the picture, it's a picture of both of them. Why do they crop out Takeshi? Are they just too lazy to draw him? But I didn't pick up on it. I'm just seeing this afterward, how they crop out Takeshi, or at least Takeshi's hair. This one being the exception, and you can actually notice something if you are paying attention. Um, cool. So another thing to kind of notice is the shirt. So um, I believe that Takeshi is wearing the same shirt as he is in the CGs. Let's see here. See, it's very dark purple. They try done that intentionally in order to try to blend the two together. But this shirt here that the character from the holograph is wearing. When I first saw this, I actually said that it reminded me of Takeshi, basically just from the shirt. But then I said no, but the hair is different. So then I didn't like conclude that it was Takeshi in this picture, which would be correct. The hair would have been different, because it's a different person. Yeah. Now there is a little bit of a kind of a stretch they did with that to try to make that effect happen with you, and that is Takeshi probably wouldn't have been wearing a shirt when the image was captured. So apparently, the Takeshi during the Takeshi route was so incredibly good looking, as described, sickeningly good looking, handsome, utter man candy, that all the girls started essentially just hanging off of him. You, the least recorded, doing so, but in the bad end, you was like, I always liked you, Takeshi. Even the computer of all things was really going hard after Takeshi, like uncontrollably and ridiculously. He was just that good, that physically attractive somehow. And of course, you can notice that the characters in the two, instances of the story do act significantly differently. They act differently between the two instances. Not as much noticeable in Takeshi, but most noticeable in the kid, because when you play as Takeshi, the kid is kind of a wimp. You don't really see very much of him. He doesn't have much screen time, and when you do, he's either chasing Pee-Pee, playing with Pee-Pee, playing with Coco, or he's complaining. He isn't the hero character that you experience when you play as the kid. And I noticed this rather early. I was like, why is the kid so different? But I just attributed it to, well, it might be difficult to write a character the same if you're playing as them, and if you're observing them from the outside. There tends to be a difference, because when you write their internals, it's tempting to make the character more sensical, because you have to justify their actions in their internal monologue. Whereas if you're just looking at a character from the outside, you can make them more of a moron. And you don't have to finagle getting the internals right for them to be a moron. So the protagonist character seems to be a little bit more well-reasoned, just by the complications of writing. But then, now that I know what they were going for, now I can see it was probably actually kind of intentional. And by noticing that, I was noticing a hint that was dropped, and I didn't go and actually interpret the hint. Takeshi's a little bit more subtle. Takeshi when you play as the kid is kind of more of a jerk, but it happened in the Coco route, which is somewhat late. What I mean by more of a jerk is the kid literally Takeshi literally wakes up the kid to go have a beer with him. The Takeshi in Takeshi's route would not have done that. Also, of course, the Takeshi in Takeshi's route seems to be more of a hero in a way. But anyway, the main point I'm trying to make here is that a lot of hints were given. And so when you finally figure it out, you don't go, oh, wow, that came out of nowhere. You go, oh, that makes sense. But you got me because I didn't, but I didn't realize. And so you get that, oh, right? Very, very, very well done. And sort of how you kind of slowly, you figure something out just before they reveal it. it's like that timing is also really good. And so how it sort of psychologically manipulates you as you go through this is done really well. So really impressed with that so far. So going through the characters here, you, I presume that they're the same U's. The two U's are just twin sisters. They might not be literal like identical twins. They might actually be clones. And you knows about her clone because we learned just in last episode that when we play as Takeshi in Coco's route, he talks to you, and you complains about the sin that she supposedly committed. By the way, that whole talk about sin, followed by by Coco's anti-joke, are things that are, that's also something kind of well done, because it's trying to prime your mind for the reveal of Tsugumi and Takeshi doing the deed in the gondola. Like, it's getting you down into the gutter, so to speak, to kind of get you ready for that. Anyway, it's like it's intentionally done that way. It's like you're supposed to think about what's the sin that you committed. Like, what did she like? You think it's something like sexual, like innately when you hear that, just because of the nature of the language. Anyway, that has something apparently to do with who she says identifies as her twin sister, which is her clone. So the Yubisar Harukana, the 2017 Yu, knew of a clone of herself, which now that kind of makes sense, because 1 year and 7 months before the 2017 incident, Yu was cloned. Or something, she could have been identical twins and somebody was like cryo-frozen or something. Someone was suspended or time travel or something. But I'm guessing she made a clone of herself. And somehow that's related to this big sin that she committed by doing so. We don't know who the surrogate mother was. It theoretically, this is a really weird long shot, could have been Tsugumi, because the clone wouldn't have had Tsugumi's genes. But the problem is that there's a placenta filter. It would have gotten vascular supply from Tsugumi's blood. I don't know if this game is gonna bother with trying to explain whether or not if a Kyurei gets pregnant with somebody who doesn't have Kyurei genes, whether or not they get the Kyurei as a fetus from the blood, or whatever. That would be a big stretch, but anyway, Yu feels kind of guilty about whatever happened that caused a clone of her to be created, or what she did to that clone, whatever it is. But from the kid's route, we know that, or at least I'm guessing, that the person who raised Yu was actually Yu, was the Yu Yokisai Harukana. And so Yu would, after she got out, would adopt the clone of herself and raise her as her child. It's not that bad. Tsugumi, on the other hand, she got separated from her children. It doesn't really seem to sound like Tsugumi just left them, or abandoned them. She at least not as newborns, because Sara remembers Tsugumi singing the lullaby to her. So she must have gone into, raised them up into the threshold of their childhood amnesia. But at some point, Lieblich managed to kidnap them from her, and she lost them. And she probably might have known that that's what happened, but couldn't figure out a way to get them back. But there's some more funny things going on there. And Tsugumi's behavior sort of makes sense now. The reason why Tsugumi's so adorable when you play as Takeshi is so crazy, stupid, hot looking that she just kind of fell for him immediately and got that whole kind of standoffish personality towards him, in that instant. And why she acts like she does in the kids' route is because basically it's like a bunch of these the exact same incident happens that happened 17 years ago. It's tragic, and it's a bad, terrible memory. And the people, there's a bunch of somewhat random people. One that looks exactly like you, which is she might have actually known who that person was. Some people she doesn't know, but might be, they remind me of my children. Some random guy who claims to be Takeshi. And Sora, they're all like acting out what happened 17 years ago like it's a skit. It's like a joke. And that would be really unnerving and really annoying and insulting. And yeah, you would be surprised that Tsugumi wasn't more upset about that happening. Like, but it now explains like why she was like, we're doing the same thing again. Come on, this is ridiculous. Stop it. Right? Because they were acting out this tragic situation from her past right in front of her like a skit. And that's just kind of rude. Yeah. As far as Takeshi's concerned, two things to note here. A long time ago, after I got the Tsugumi ending with Takeshi, I said that I made the suspicion in the Xbox remake that perhaps Takeshi lives in that ending. Well, I'm thinking that that's not the case, and I'll explain why later. They probably wouldn't do that, because it seems like that's kind of the point of that whole thing, is that Takeshi dies in every single one of his endings. He dies no matter what. That's a big deal, and it would really break the plot if they made an ending where he doesn't die yet. They'd break the whole point of the plot, probably. So I know the only opinion I have on the Xbox remake is negative, but they really have to mess up if they made an ending where Takeshi survives, at least that achievable that early in your gameplay time. But there's somebody who claims to be Takeshi in the Takeshi side. He's just a random dude, as far as I know, but he knows what to do to act out what Takeshi did in the 2017 incident. So he may actually know, despite being such a jerk and a moron, he might actually know a lot of stuff and may be in on something. We don't actually see anything from his perspective, so we don't really know any of his story, why he's there, who asked him to be there, and what his motivations are. The kid also, he leaves behind a random dude, right? The kid from Takeshi's route, but the kid from 2017. But that one makes a little bit more sense, because that person can be just a random kid, because that kid wasn't trying to act out anything in particular. He wasn't repeating an incident from before. That was the first time it happened. So the original kid is just a random kid. The Takeshi in 2034, he's claiming I'm Takeshi. He's wearing the same shirt Takeshi was, and he was acting out similar actions than the original Takeshi was, despite not being that Takeshi. And that makes him very sus, so to speak. This is Sora. Now, trying to guess so now that we know, like, the whole, like, that Tsugumi is the kid and Sora's parents, and these happened 17 years apart, which was really easy to guess early on, like you and the clone of you and all this stuff, there's still a lot of things unanswered. Primarily, who is behind all this? Who set it up, right? Who's behind setting up this 2034 incident like a skit, this acting out of the 2017 incident? Who masterminded that? And how did they do it, and why did they do it? Now, the how isn't really that interesting a question, so I'm going to kind of ignore that one. But the who and the why are very interesting. And based on patterns from games like this in this kind of genre, you would guess that the big mastermind behind the whole thing would be Coco. Just because that's a tendency for what these kind of games tend to do. Is the person in the last route tends to be the person behind it all. Especially the person with power and the little girl, right? Those things really make that person seem like, and if that person really didn't have much of a role otherwise, it's like, why is Coco there? Why does she even need to be there if she's not the person behind it all? because you could say she's just comic relief, but she's not really that funny. Um, why does she have so much influence on it? Why is she so mysterious if cracking her mystery is not to crack the whole thing? She doesn't seem to have those connections with the other characters that they don't. She isn't part of the whole father-son thing. She does call Takeshi mommy and Tsugumi Takeshi daddy and Tsugumi mommy, but it seems like that's just hints that they are a daddy and a mommy, not that they are Coco specifically. I would guess that Coco is the one behind it all. Now, to say the next thing, I necessarily has to give some sort of spoilers for potentially other Uchikoshi games that he would write later, that I know the plot of. And I kind of have to do this because it doesn't make a very good Let's Play if I try to explain what I'm thinking and why without explaining what I know. And so there's going to be, there's no way really around this without making kind of a, I don't like it when you're trying to when you don't actually share what you're thinking when you do a Let's Play. I guess some people don't because they don't want to make it to be like a spoiler. They want you to come to the same conclusions they are yourself. But I don't watch a Let's Play for that. I watch a Let's Play to see what the person playing it is thinking and how they're reacting to it. I want to know what they're thinking. So it kind of annoys me. Anyway, so there's a little bit of potential, but I'm not going to tell you what games I'm spoiling exactly, but it's kind of bad. So anyway, getting on with it, Tsugumi supposedly can see alternate timelines and into the future, particularly if it's the situation in the future that is in close resemblance to the situation she is in. That would be resonance. She can speak across time, forward in time, and probably speak across alternate timelines. Because she has something called ESP. Well, let's just add a couple extra letters to that. ESPER. Esper. Maybe that's where that came from. So Coco has a power we're going to call Esper. Okay? And therefore has the capability of controlling, applying knowledge from what's happening in the future, stealing the kids' ideas about how to escape, and applying them to the past, or working together between the future and the past to accomplish a goal. And it could set up the whole 2034 situation that mimics the 2017 situation to accomplish a goal. Okay? So abandoning that for a moment, coming back, this goes to kind of why it would break the game if we had a route where Takeshi survived. Takeshi dies in all of his routes. The goal would be to create one where Takeshi doesn't die. And that motivation would not exist if Takeshi wouldn't die. So, to save Takeshi. That's what I'm guessing the whole point of this is, to figure out a way to save Takeshi. But how are they going to use the 2034 incident to save Takeshi back in 2017? How is Coco going to save Takeshi back in 2017 using that? No idea. But I have some other ideas about how that will turn out. I don't know why it requires the 2034 incident. That's the part I haven't figured out. In that, it may have more to do with getting the kid and Takeshi to resonate. You see, Takeshi seems to be an Esper also, because he can kind of feel when the kid in the future is going through a similar situation as him, and the kid can kind of feel, he can kind of dream what Takeshi's experiencing back in the past. The kid would also be an Esper because he inherited the Esper genetics from Takeshi. He actually has both. He has the Cure and the Esper because his mom was a Cure and his dad was an Esper. And so Takeshi can take ideas from his son and use them. Well, what does he? How does that come? How does that be used? Again, not sure. But there is something that's still left to be used, and that is the pods have a functionality that is still yet to be used. And this has got to be, they got to use this at some point. This has got to be part of it. The whole cryogenic suspension. For a while, I thought that maybe you, like characters like you, were cryogenically suspended, but that got shot down. We figured out that there was two U's. That was unnecessary. So, who's left? And the Takeshi in 2034 is a completely different random person. We still know nothing about him. The kid in 2034 is a different person. The kid in 2017 we still know nothing about. So the only person left to be cryogenically suspended is Takeshi himself. But he doesn't have an ending where he is. But there's one ending left for Takeshi where he could be. That we saved Takeshi by freezing him. And then he ends up frozen in IBF for 17 years. And somehow, even though IBF may have been rebuilt and started being under operation again or something, they don't unfreeze Takeshi until they go down into IBF in the kid's route in 2034 and thaw out Takeshi. And the Takeshi and Tsugumi and the children meet again. They take one big happy family photo, just like at the end. You know, just like how every one of just like Ace Attorney style, DDLC Plus style. And Tsugumi sings the lullaby, or maybe they all sing it together, and that kind of thing happens in the end. And everyone gets back together, and it's all, and that one outcome that you hinted at in our palm reading, where you marry a beautiful woman and you have a happy family, comes true. Because right now, all we've seen of Takeshi is death. Every single way he goes. Anyway, time to actually start playing the game again. Yeah. Throwing down a theory, Coco set all of this up in order to save Takeshi, and is going to do that by creating a Takeshi route where he cryogenically suspends himself to be thawed in 2034. That's my throwing that out there. We'll see if I'm correct. It's 2017. So 2013 was 4 years ago. I said to you. You and I were alone in the security office. All of a sudden, you had asked me to come see her, and had started talking about what had happened in 2013. No, I probably had seen it coming. Just before she had spoken to me, you had hinted indirectly that she had changed her mind and needed someone to confide in. Her expression was solemn, like a nun about to seek redemption. Yu's eyes were empty of emotion. And at that same time, her gaze showed an unconditional compassion, impartial, demanding nothing, asking nothing. And in 2014, you would have been 15 and a half, approximately. After a short while...
So.
That's right.
今から4年前.
It was 4 years ago. And remember that we don't know very much about the backstory of Yubi Saiharu Kana. We did this whole route with Yubi Sayaki Kana as a kid, so we know like about her relationship with Sara quite a bit, like why she was studying archaeology and so on. Yubi Saiharu Kana, we don't know so much about.
これは私がまだ14歳だった頃の話.
When I was 14, oh yeah, 4 years ago. Okay, I can't count. Whatever. Yu began quietly to tell her story. Yubi Saiharu Kana had a serious heart condition. She hadn't been born with it. In 2013, when she was 14, she suddenly had fallen ill. One day, Yu had suddenly collapsed. She was examined at her hospital, and the doctor told her, "This is very hard for me to tell you, so I want you to please listen calmly. You have a very serious heart condition." Oh, so she cloned herself to preserve herself. Oh. But she's still alive though in 2030. So this gets solved somehow. She's still alive in 2034. It is unclear whether you'll even make it to the end of high school. This meant that she only had 3 or 4 more years to live. A transplant was out of the question, and even with treatment, she would only suffer and they couldn't guarantee her a cure. Why would a transplant be out of the question? The kind of one of those things about the thing with heart transplants, though, is like you put yourself on a transplant list, and it's basically in order for you to live, somebody else has to get brain dead. And essentially, how you get brain dead most likely in this day and age is you get in a car wreck and get severe head trauma. So it's like my survival is dependent on the happenstance of somebody else dying. True, I didn't cause them to die. I didn't really wish for them to die specifically. I'm just like on the transplant just in case, because it's better for one person to live and the other die than for both to die. Right? Just that's the concept of it. But you kind of have to feel like, well, another person has to die for me to live. That's still like the truism, even if that would have been an accident. It's like if I were to make cars safer, then that would help that would potentially, that would seem like a good thing, but it would make it so that I was less likely to survive. But I guess they're like transplants out of the question because plot convenience. You could do a heart transplant, and it works. I think didn't they do it to Richard Cheney, or Dick Cheney as we call him? In fact, there are YouTube videos of it being done, and I've watched one, and it's a thing to watch. I don't know how to describe it exactly, because like you cut the heart out while it's still beating. That's the thing about it. That's I don't know how to describe it. The thing about it that's a thing. That's kind of like you have to watch that. Like it's beating as you take it out, and it eventually stops beating when you've taken it out. Anyway, you have to like cut into a beating heart. There was no way left for her to survive. She had received a death sentence. But medical treatment is advancing daily. In a few years, we may still find a cure. So don't give up, you have to fight this illness. With the doctor's hollow consolation, emptiness took over her mind. 2014. Her fear of her approaching death was growing. One day while she was at the hospital, she met a gentleman. Through the course of their meeting, she and the gentleman came to trust one another and became very close. It was a close relationship, like the bond between a parent and a child, between a father and a daughter. Yubei Harukana had grown up without knowing a father's warmth. Perhaps she was seeking from him the love from the father she had never known. Well, we know that Yubei Sayaki Kana didn't have a father. We didn't really know that Yubei Harukana didn't have a father, but now I guess we do know. Oh yeah, yes we do. Yeah, oh Fui, because her father died. They have the same father they're looking for. Both of them are like thinking Yoichi was their father. I guess it's because Yubisai Harukana told Yubisai Akikana that Yoichi was her father. Even though she was a clone. She like told her she had a father and this is what his name was. Huh. And this is how long ago he died. That's weird. That's so weird. She told her wrong. She like told her how long ago her father would have died when she was her age. That's weird. Anyway, perhaps she was seeking from him the love from the father she'd never known. And then this is like, yeah, I know where this is kind of going, but when he found out about Yu's illness, he felt as much sympathy as he would have for his own daughter. They were close like a parent and a child, joined by a strong feeling like love. Having built up a trust, Yumi Sayaru Kana one day confessed her fear, her despair and agony to him. With a serious look on his face, the gentleman said, "Come to my lab." And is this gentleman, just by happenstance, happened to be what's that family name? What is Izumi and Kurumi's family name. Ah, it's mentioned so many times. Anyway, maybe that's who this guy is. Ah, Marino. Yeah, his name was Shigezo Marino. We know who this guy is. We played Ever17. Dr. Marino had a world authority. Was a world authority in genetic engineering. In November of that year, we didn't know actually Mr. Marino did this. Never7 takes place in 2021, right? So he would have done this 7 years ago at that time. November of that year, after making up her mind, Yubisai Harukana visited the doctor's lab. There are 3 types of immortality. The first immortality of the body, the second immortality of the memory, the third is genetic immortality. So first is that of Tsugumi, the second is that of Sora, the third is that of you. Would you like to try the third kind? The doctor presented this extraordinary plan to her with the calmness of a scientist, his tone matter of fact. Your heart problem was acquired after birth, rather being something you were born with. So if you choose the third option, you don't have to worry about passing the condition on to your children. There's nothing for you to worry about. Ever since being told that she would die, she had been terrified at the approaching shadow of death. Not a night would go by that she didn't rail against her misfortune, all the while clawing at her chest in agony. She had given up on life and was no more than an empty shell. But this day, she was suddenly able to see a glimmer of hope. The doctor's words convincing her, and her way of thinking gradually changed. If I only have a few more years to live, I at least want to leave something of myself behind in this world. Her tenacity for life defied imagination. She finally made the decision. She chose the third option. 1 month later, December 2014, Yubisai Harukana had the nucleus from one of her own cells implanted in her own ovaries, which she began to grow in her womb. Of course, Dr. Marino performed the surgery. She was pregnant with her new self. And it's kind of like the whole Virgin Mary problem where if you're pregnant, everyone's going to think you got pregnant by a man. But you did, yeah. Anyway. 9 months later, September 26, 2015, Yubisai Harukana safely gave birth.
あなたは私の子供。
My baby.
あなたは私の妹。
You are my sister.
そしてあなたは私自身。
You are me, myself. Yubisai Harukana loved the new child with all of her heart and gave her a name. She called her Yubisai Akikana. That's right, Yubisai Akikana was Yubisai Harukana's daughter. And at the same time, they not only were mother and daughter, but also shared the same genetic design, just like twins. What a twist of fate. Did she do it out of the madness that comes from being so close to death? But still, look at the lively face of the newborn child. Look at how pure its smile is, how bright its new life shines. Could anyone watch something as simple as its earnest attempts to grab something and believe that the baby was a tragedy? Was it a sin to create a life? Was it a sin to want life? The baby smiled happily, sometimes it cried, as if it were asking, is it a sin to be alive? Monday, May 1st, 2017, Yubisai Harukana, who is now a student at Kyumaiken Women's College, has started working part-time in Lamu during the holidays. She wanted to find a clue about her father, Yoiki, who had gone missing 17 years before. Her mother, Yuki, kept telling her, your father fell into the ocean and drowned, but you didn't believe it. She held on to the hope that he was still alive somewhere. Very similar to the hope that Takeshi is still alive somewhere. Though it's a vain hope unless they can somehow fix reality so he is. She had left her 1-year-old daughter, Yubisai Akikana, with her mother, so she was not worried about her. Yubisai Harukana's heart was almost reached its limit. She had given birth safely, but could no longer escape the fate which awaited her. There was only one thing left that she wanted to do. Before she died, she wanted to find out whether her father was still alive. The father who had disappeared when she was a year old. She had looked at his photo until it had become ragged and torn, but had no memories of his warmth or even having been held by him. For that reason, she waved off all the doctor's attempts to stop her, and had come to Lemu. She wanted to find out about her father. When it happened 17 years ago, she wanted to reveal the truth. As her story ended, Yu reached for a file that was on the control panel. She opened it and silently passed it to me. So the baby was your child. Which means you were lying to me.
嘘じゃないよ。
It wasn't a
こ
lie.
の子は確かに私の娘。
She is my daughter.
でも娘であると同時に双子の妹でもあるの。
But she is also my twin sister.
そして
And
彼女はもう一人の私。
she's another me.
私自身でもあるのよ。
She is myself. I didn't know what to say.
これが私の犯した罪。
This is my sin.
決して許されることのない永遠の宿業。
I know I'll never be forgiven and will never be able to atone for it.
だけど
But
前にも言ったように後悔はしてないんだ。
like I told you, I have no regrets.
あの子を産んでよかったと思ってる。
I am glad I had her.
新しい命が芽生えたあの瞬間を私は決して忘れない。
I'll never forget the moment that new life was created.
それは福音の訪れた瞬間だった。
It was such an unbelievably happy moment.
ママってあの子が初めて言った時、
The first time she said, Mama, Mama.
私うまく言えないけど
Takeshi, I can't explain it.
尊さとか愛とか幸福とかそういうのをはるかに超えてとても大きな光の波に包み込まれたような気がして。
It was more than a precious feeling or love, or that good fortune had come my way. I felt as if I were wrapped in light.
私は地獄に落ちてもいい。
I don't care if I burn in hell.
何千年何万年何億年と地獄の豪華に身を焼かれても構わない。
I don't care if I burn in the fires of hell for thousands, millions of years.
絶対にあの子だけはどんなことがあっても
But I
守
knew I
りたい
wanted,
と思った。
but I knew I wanted to protect my daughter no matter what.
苦しませたくなかった。
I didn't want her to
あ
suffer.
の子の笑顔はとても愛おしくて、
Her smile is so beautiful.
小さな手のひらは可愛くて、
Her tiny hands are so cute.
あの子は私のすべてだから、
She is everything to me.
かけがえのない存在だから。
She is irreplaceable, even though she is a replacement.
あの子には罪はないの。
Besides, none of this is her fault.
この世に存在するありとあらゆる生命と同じように、あの子は祝福されて生まれてきたのよ。
Was welcomed to this world, just like any other soul born who comes here.
同時にあの子を産み落とした瞬間、
But at the
私
same,
は死んだの。
but at the same time, the moment I gave birth to her, I died.
私はもうこの世界にいないも同然。
It was as if I no longer existed.
なぜなら
You see,
私はあの子に命を、私の存在のすべてを捧げたのだから。
I gave all my life, my existence to my child. You showed the photograph again. The baby in the picture was reaching out, trying to grab something.
はーい、もしもーし、聞こえてるか？
Hello, are you listening to me? You grabbed my shoulders and shook me.
ねえ、一体どうしちゃったっていうのよ、少年。
What's the matter with you, kid?
まさか今年が西暦何年かってことまで忘れちゃってたわけ？
You can't possibly have forgotten what year it is. Her words made no impression on me. What on earth? My mouth was dry and the palm of my clenched fist was drenched with sweat. First of all, I began to think things through. The you that I knew, the you standing in front of me, Yubi Aki Kana, was born on the 22nd of September 2015. Her mother was Yubi Saiharu Kana. That meant this was now 2034, 17 years after Yubi Saiharu Kana's time in 2017. No, but wait. What about the date on that mail? It had been received on 2/7/19. My voice came out strangled. It's 2034 now. Yuki died 15 years ago, which would have been in 2019. But the date on that says 02/07/19.
ああ、それ
Oh, that?
そんなこと気にしてたんだ。
You were worried about that? You laughed.
まあ、勘違いするのも無理はないか。
Well, I can understand why you might make that mistake.
あのね、
Do you see?
メールに書いてあった受信日時は、ドイツ式の表記を使ってるの。
The date on that mail was written in the German style.
だから、年、月、日じゃなくって、月、日、年の順番で表されるんだ。
Not the Japanese order of year, month, day, but month, day, year. Do they actually do month, day, year in German? I know they do it in English, but I know in Spanish it's reversed. It's day, month, year. Anyway, so you're telling me that. That wasn't the July 19th, 2002. It was February 7th, 2019. You nodded.
他にご質問は？
Any other questions? I shook my head weakly and trudged out of the security office. And since I didn't know Japanese, I didn't think of that. I had figured out the relationship between you and her mother, but wondered whether I should tell her. No, I probably better that I don't. It's better for you in the long run. She'll figure it out in her route. But first I had to take care of my own problems. There was somewhere I had to go.
もう何よ。
What is it? This is the thing that started their argument?
いきなりこんなとこに連れてきて、どうするつもり？
What'd you bring me here for? I wanted to talk to you guys alone.
話したいこと？
About what? Tsugumi was silent. She seemed to be afraid of something. Tsugumi perhaps already sensed what I was going to say. Her eyes gazed around wildly.
それって重要なことなの？
Is it important? Yes, very. It's something I don't want the others to hear. Wait, I don't mind if they hear it, but I wanted you and Tsugumi to know first. So that's why I asked you to come over here.
で、その重要な話っていうのは？
So what's so important? Hadn't Sara noticed anything? Her blank, unguarded expression. She had to have noticed something. The May 1st after Sara met Tsugumi for the first time, she had looked totally dazed. Surely Sara had sensed something. To be standing there calmly, she had to be in denial. Reason was telling her that what she suspected couldn't be true. The coincidence of meeting her mother again was probably too much for Sara to believe.
ねえ、なんで黙ってるの？早く教えてよ。
Well, are you going to say anything? Could you hurry up? Sara urged me to get to the point. Tsugumi said nothing, but her breathing seemed a little rough. Sara, could you lend me your pendant and lighter for a moment?
いいけど。
All right. She took them out of her pocket and gave them to me. Chick. I struck a flame, illuminating the pendant. Takeshi. This was the real Takeshi Kuranari. I held the pendant and the flame closer to Tsugumi. Tsugumi kept her head down, refusing to look up at the pendant. Her brow was furrowed and she was biting her lip. Her eyes pressed tightly to her sides. Her clenched fists were shaking. Look closer, I whispered to her. You've seen this pendant before, haven't you? It's Takeshi. The real Takeshi Kuranari is right here. The moment I said these words, Tsugumi's eyes flew open. Stripped of expression, she wore a face like a mask, only her eyes burned with a fierce light.
ちょっと待って。何よそれ。どういうこと？
Wait just a minute. What are you talking about?
たけしって、あのたけしのこと？
Takeshi, you mean Takeshi?
そこに写ってるのがたけしなの？
Takeshi's the one in this pendant? No. The Takeshi we know isn't really Takeshi. I think he's lying to us.
え
The real Takeshi Koronari, is your and my father. Tsugumi closed her eyes. She breathed out a long sigh. I could see the tension leave Tsugumi's body.
ねえ、どういうことなのお兄ちゃん。
Hey, what's this all
ち
about?
ゃんと説明してよ。
Explain what's happening. Alright, but before I do, I want to check something. I hesitated about what to say next. I looked above my head. The sky was full of stars. A single whale twisted and floated through space. Well, where do you go all by yourself? Will you meet someone special one day? Snap! I extinguished the lighter. I gripped the pennant and the lighter in my hand. Tsugumi's outline was hazy in the dark. She was our long sought after mother. When I called out to her, warm tears ran down my cheeks. You are our mother, aren't you? Sara and my mother. Mother. You are, aren't you?
え
What? Tsugumi slowly opened her eyes. She looked at Sara and me. I could see the tears in her eyes. Mother, please say something. I don't blame you for anything. I've waited for you for so long. I've been waiting for you. Say something. I screamed at her. Sara clung to my arm. Shaking her head, she buried her face in my chest. Her thin body was shaking. Don't just stand there, say something. Holding Sara tightly, I stepped forward.
違うわ。
No,
私は母親なんかじゃない。
I am not your mother. Don't lie to me. I know everything. 17 years ago, there was another accident just like this one here in Lamu. You and Takeshi became a couple. Tsugumi was crying huge tears. Tsugumi tried to stop them. Her breath was ragged and came out in hiccups. Her face twisted as she struggled to keep control of her emotions. Tears welled up in her eyes and rolled down her cheeks.
ええ。そうよ。
Yes. That's right.
確かにそう。
You're right.
私はあなたたちを産んだ。
I gave birth to you.
でも
But
私にはお母さんなんて呼ばれる資格は
I have no
ないの
right.
よ。
I have no right to be called mother.
あなたたちにはもう本当の母親がいるでしょ。
You have a real mother, don't you?
優しいお母さんがいるでしょ。
Someone took care of you.
私はあなたたちを
I
守
wasn't
れ
able
な
to,
かった。
I wasn't able to protect you both.
守れなかったの。
I couldn't take care of you.
捨てたも同然なのよ。
I pretty much abandoned you.
置き去りにして見捨てたの。
I left you and walked away.
ひどいでしょ。許せないでしょ。
I'm terrible, and I don't expect you to be able to forgive me.
だから私は
That is why I am
母親なんかじゃないのよ。
not your mother.
お母さんなんて呼ばないで。お願い。
Please don't call me mother.
お願い。だから
Please don't. Sumi put her head in her hands and sobbed. At that
マ
moment,
マ
Mama?
ママ
Mama? Mama! Sara tore herself away from me and flew into Tsugumi's arms. Following her lead, I clung to Tsugumi and cried as well. The first thing I noticed was her familiar smell. I breathed in her chest deeply. Covered in tears, following in the warmth, I felt as if I had regained everything I had ever lost. The three of us held each other tightly, relishing in the touch of one another. Entwined, our hearts became one. We were no longer our individual selves, but one collective identity. There was no boundaries between us. The whole being was filled with warmth. Besides me, Sara's cheeks were wet with tears. Tsugumi was soft and her skin was sweet and sticky. I recalled the long-forgotten memories of my mother's smell. It wasn't exactly the same feeling as nostalgia. It was primitive, something instinctive, a sweetness that had been wired directly into my brain.
Mama.
Mama. Mother. As if in response, Tsugumi pulled us closer, gripping us with a fierce determination. She buried her face in Sara's and my hair, drew us close, and stroked the back of our heads.
ごめんね。
I'm sorry.
ごめん。ごめんなさい。
So sorry. Tsugumi's voice was choked up.
許してなんて言えないけど、
I can't ask you to forgive me.
私
I...
今まで一度もあなたたちのこと忘れたことはなかった。
I never once forgot about you.
ずっとあなたたちに
All this time,
会いたくて
I have wanted to see you.
会いたくて謝りたくて。
Find you and apologize.
もういいの。
It's alright.
ママ、
Mama.
もう謝ったりなんかしなくていいの。
You don't need to apologize.
私はママに会えただけで、それだけで。
It's enough just to be with you. As we held on to each other, we understood everything. Sara and I accepted everything, understood, and forgave. Reasons weren't important. At that moment, a quiet peace filled us. It was enough. We didn't require anything else. I relaxed and leaned against my mother. She was warm. They have to say this over and over and over again. I closed my eyes and was intoxicated by her warmth. Again! Mother. Mother. A cozy slumber. A soft breeze under the May sunshine. Peace. It was like floating on a calm ocean, swaying comfortably, cuddled up together. Before I knew it, I had stopped crying. All I could hear was just our calm breathing and my mother's heartbeat. Dudum, 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 dudum. I was alive. Or maybe I had just been born. Dum, dudum, dudum. Everything was affirmed and accepted and forgiven. There was no me, nor Sara, nor Tsugumi. There was only one life connected together. Just one single soul. In the year 2017, May 7th, 11 a.m., the men from the Leiblich were waiting for Tsugumi when she got to the floating island. Tsugumi, a carrier of the Curie virus. To them, she was a valuable sample. Their eyes glaring, the mouths half open, she could see their dark, wet tongues. It was almost possible for Tsugumi to smell the reek of their excitement. Like the smell of men lusting after flesh. It was a fetid stench, greasy and rotten. For it was Tsugumi's body that they were after. What they wanted was nothing more than to perform human experiments under the pretext of making the ultimate human dream come true. By using Tsugumi's body, they were planning to gain knowledge, fame, and fortune. That was indeed their desire. We've been waiting for you, one of them took a deep bow. Behind his veneer of politeness was an evil that threatened to spill forth, making Tsugumi stick to her stomach. Some of the others in his entourage licked their lips, swallowing their saliva like dogs gone mad with the hunt. That instant, Tsugumi kicked hard off the ground, breaking into a run. She ran across the wide surface of the huge artificial island, desperately scaling the high surrounding fence, and fled into the nearby foliage. The cacophony of screams and angry cursing faded behind her. Tsugumi hid and waited until nightfall. She held a single hamster on her chest. At night, a supply-carrying vessel slipped out of the floating island's port. Tsugumi had stowed away on the vessel, hiding herself among the cargo. She was headed to the mainland. From that moment on, Tsugumi's life was consumed with one thought: how to escape from them. Though she wasn't a criminal, she avoided people, preferring to hide in the darkness, all the while threatened by ominous feelings of being hunted. Nothing changed after she safely made it to land. Every few weeks she moved from a town to a different town, wandering in the darkness. She slept under bridges, under backstreet eaves, pipes pouring into the ocean, and even in public restrooms. It was an endless cycle of running. She never had a second's peace. She couldn't turn to the police. She had no place to live, her identity was uncertain, and her age and appearance didn't match. The police would only doubt her. Information regarding Tsugumi had spread through the National Police Network. It was only a matter of time before Lieblich would find her. Lieblich's influence had extended to national politics. There was nothing else for Tsugumi to do but continue to hide in back alleys. She hated Lieblich. They had destroyed everything Tsugumi had cared about and made her life a living hell. What's more, they had taken away the love of her life, Takeshi Kuronari. She wanted to get revenge on Lieblich with every fiber of her being. Tsugumi came to hate this world, and her heart became even more hardened to it. 2 months had passed. It was summertime. All of a sudden, she began feeling sick. She knew she had stopped menstruating, but she didn't want to think about the possibility. She knew she went to visit an illegal doctor who was well known in the back streets. Tsugumi was pregnant. She was sure it was Takeshi's baby. She'd never been with anyone else. She was pregnant. At night, she went to the deserted coastal area of a small nearby town. There was nothing but printing factories and abandoned houses. Unsure if it was a river or the ocean, she sat on a boat dock looking at a neon sign by the highway. She touched her stomach. She felt a sense of awe and joy at the fact that there was life growing in her stomach and that it was connected to her. The neon light glittered and flickered off the water's surface. Oh, there's the neon light. I was looking for that. Because we already got the darkness. We already got the silence. Tsugumi looked at the lights with her hands on her stomach. Realizing that Takeshi's babies were inside her, she couldn't stop crying. They might have only been only an inch big at that time. But the survival of the two babies outstripped the needs of the mother's body that surrounded them. Tsugumi almost had the illusion that it wasn't her who bore the children, but it was actually they who bore her. Everything that she was, she poured into her two babies. She felt that she was part of the babies, not the other way around. It was then that Tsugumi decided to sacrifice everything for the two tiny lives. Love was a concept to her, but if love could be brought into a physical form to her, it seemed must be the babies in her stomach. That it was, love was growing in her stomach. Takeshi and Tsugumi's babies. Before long, the hatred she felt towards everything had disappeared without a trace. For the first time, Tsugumi felt as though there was a higher power guiding her life. 7 months later, January 21st, 2018, Tsugumi was suddenly struck with contractions. When they came, the back alley doctor had gone somewhere. She visited a nearby clinic. She had no medical insurance, no identification. Most importantly, she had no money. When he found out that she couldn't pay, the doctor beat Tsugumi as though she were a stray animal. With nowhere else to go, the two babies were born in an old boat shack. The old woman was living there, but Tsugumi could not tell whether she lived there or was just sleeping there temporarily. It was the old woman who helped Tsugumi through the birth. Oh, how precious, so precious. You've done a fine job, dearie. The old lady repeated this many times as she gently rinsed the babies in a tin basin. The sweat-covered Tsugumi was lying down with only a thin towel between her and the hardwood floor. Tsugumi's eyes gazed unfocused out a nearby window. Snow was falling outside. How darling, yes, a precious boy child and a girl, which one will you hold first? The illegal doctor had told her, so she was expecting twins, but she never imagined that they would be fraternal. A bit surprised, she said, both at the same time? Wrapped in the old cloth, Tsugumi gently held them to her chest. Not to worry, my dearie. I boiled them cloth and the scissors that cut their cord in hot water. Good, I did. Thank you. Tsugumi thanked her. Thank you very much. She gave thanks for the two lives who had been born safely. Thank you. And these last words were directed toward the deep darkness beyond the window. The snow was falling. Yes, no coincidence that they decided to make it snowing. Because they're trying to make you think of Christmas. The two babies pressed to Tsugumi's chest with eyes closed, let out small yawns. The Curie virus. Soon after she had given birth, Tsugumi's thoughts returned to the possibility. If they got infected by Curie while they were inside of me, and if their DNA was altered just like me, Tsugumi visited the illegal doctor. Well, don't worry about it, he explained, laughing. According to the taxonomic classification, a pure human would belong to primates Anthropoidea. Hominidae, hominidi, Homo genus sapiens. Tsugumi, whose DNA information was altered by the Curie virus, was not a pure human anymore, but rather a subspecies of it. Now let's just say you're subspecies Curie for now. Now any kids who are born from Takeshi, the Homo sapien, and Tsugumi the Curie would be technically a hybrid. Now, by the way, I guess I should tell you that the Curie virus only affects pure humans, the Homo sapiens. So there's no way the Curie virus possibly affects your two little hybrids there. Some of the unique functions scientists have discovered, such as regenerating telomeres and regenerative healing, are inherited recessively. For blood types, without exception, all children born with a type A father and a type O father, for instance, can only be type AO with a type A predisposition. Why? Because type A factors are inherited dominantly, and type O factors are inherited recessively. In order for a child's blood type to be type O, you'd have to have both a mixture of either A, O, AO, AO, BO, you know how it goes. It can only be one of the above, meaning that both the parents gotta have the type O factor to genetic milkshake. Same goes for the Curie virus. Any child born with a pure-blooded sapiens and Curie will. All the sapiens Curie inherit the dominant physical traits of both. From them rugrats to become full-blooded Curie, the parents have to be Curie x Curie, sapiens Curie x Curie, or sapiens Curie x sapiens Curie. Any of those combinations meaning that both parents have to be part of all Curie. And since there are two different little critters were born of a pure sapiens and pure Curie, they have the same physical traits as a pure human and won't possess the Curie traits like perpetual youth. So you don't have to worry nothing about alright. It's not that they're not babies eternally. So you don't have to worry about alright. The doctor held up the two babies Tsugumi had brought and laughed again. Tsugumi didn't know his background. It's probably that he had been part of Leibniz laboratory staff in the past since he knew so much about the Curie virus. But he didn't seem to be one of them. Tsugumi figured she could trust him. Among outcasts there is an unspoken law. You don't go nosing around the other people's pasts. Tsugumi didn't ask him anything more, and he didn't demand to know about her either. A year after giving birth, it was winter again. Tsugumi was rented a tiny room and lived together with the two babies. Of course, Tommy was there as well. It was a quiet, rustic little coastal town. It wasn't a city or tourist town, no fishing or farming, nothing, just a dreary port town. During the day, Tsugumi worked for next to nothing at a sewing factory while the babies stayed at a daycare center. She spent every day glued to a sewing machine from the early morning to 4 p.m., and after that she would spend time with the babies. Her wages were very low, and of course they were poor. She couldn't even afford disposable diapers. Tsugumi collected small scraps of cloth, leftovers from the factory, and sewed diapers and clothes for the babies. Despite the harsh living conditions, the babies were growing healthily. Their life was a peaceful one, and although they were poor, the poverty didn't threaten them. They were content. The three of them were always smiling. Mama, mama, oh chammy, chammy. They were already beginning to talk. The boy had started walking a few steps at a time, the girl able to stand barely as she held on to things. The girl had begun to speak, oh chammy, chammy, which was very unusual for a 1-year-old. The boy, it seemed, grew faster physically, and the girl grew faster intellectually. Tsugumi tenderly watched over their cute gestures. She was filled with happiness. May 7th, 2019. The two babies were 15 months old. Tsugumi had taken them to the beach. The boy ran around the sand, falling and getting back up over and over. The girl was sitting by the water, putting her hands in the waves. The girl was giggling, saying, cold, so cold. Watching out over the flat surface of the ocean, Tsugumi's thoughts turned to Takeshi. So live, so long as you're alive, live, don't worry. I'm not going to die. Those were Takeshi's last words to her. It had been 2 years already. I'm not going to die. After saying that, he sunk to the bottom of the ocean, protecting the woman he loved, protecting the children right in front of her. You fool, you're a liar, Tsugumi whispered to the ocean. But at the same time, she still hadn't given up hope. No, he must be alive somewhere. He's a man of his word. Just then, a wave swallowed the girl who had been playing near the edge of the water. For an adult, it would hardly have reached her shin, but for a 1-year-old baby, it was as big as tsunami. The girl disappeared in a splash of water and was sucked out into the ocean like a piece of driftwood by the tide. Tsugumi ran as hard as she could, held back by the resistance of the sand. But before she could get there, something unbelievable happened. The boy, who had only 1 year and 3 months old, jumped into the water and saved the girl. Hardly able to believe what she had seen, Tsugumi rushed toward them. She carried them to dry sand. The girl started crying. The boy, seemingly unaware of what had happened, looked at his sister crying. A few seconds later, he fell over as all his strength had left him. That night, both of them came down with a high fever. It was summertime. 1.5 years had passed since the birth. All of that time in the past 1.5 years had been filled with happiness. Nothing special had happened, and that was why it had been so peaceful. The boy was a wild one, and Tsugumi could hardly take her eyes off him for a second. He constantly was putting everything, even chamois, in his mouth. The electric appearance that he touched seemed to break, and he wouldn't stop jamming metal wires into the outlets. The girl wasn't quite as much of a challenge since she moved about less, but still Tsugumi had to put up with her stubbornness. She refused to eat things she didn't like, and when she got in a bad mood, she wouldn't stop fussing. And no matter how much Tsugumi warned her, she wouldn't stop playing with her brother's hair. And she would always demand for more chamois, more chamois. Those days were filled with being buffeted about by her 2 rambunctious children. But no matter how challenging, even those days were filled with happiness. At night, all 3 of them slept together, cuddled up in a thin mattress. Mama, mama. Chamois, chamois. Looking at their sleep, the 2 babies sought their mother's touch. Looking down at their sweet, innocent gestures, Tsugumi felt bliss she had never known. She had never known. One day, her peaceful words had shattered to bits. It all happened unexpectedly. Caught up in her life of happiness, Tsugumi was forgotten to watch out for them. She didn't know how they had found out, but they had somehow gathered information and showed up without warning. Then the people from Lieblich. With no time to collect anything, all Tsugumi could bring with her was her 2 babies and her hamster as she fled. So they ran, but it was obvious to Tsugumi that eventually Lieblich would hunt them down. And they continued running, Tsugumi thought to herself. Even if I could keep escaping, would it really be happiness for the 2 children? They wouldn't be able to go to school, and it would be too hard for them to keep moving from town to town. Besides, if they ever get caught, what would they do to my children at Lieblich? It's too dangerous for them to be with me. Tsugumi made up her mind. She researched an orphanage she could trust and decided to leave them there. The 2 children were just too young. Even if Tsugumi had tried to explain, they couldn't have understood. With no other option, she left the pendant she had kept with her, making a wish as she gave it. I will come back for you. I will come to get you, I promise. Being too young to understand the situation, the 2 children just stared at their mother, crying. Weeping bitter tears, Tsugumi looked back many times as she walked away. All she had now was chamois. From Tsugumi's chest pocket, chamois looked up at her face in puzzlement. But even chamois's cute gestures could do little to ease Tsugumi's broken heart. She spent many nights in the depths of despair, crying in her sorrow. A few years later, by the time Tsugumi went back to the orphanage, the children were already gone. From that time, she had gone through life, no more than an empty husk. Until that day, until that very moment, Tsugumi had kept searching for her children, wandering through darkness. Tsugumi finished telling her story and closed her eyes gently. She never once mentioned the names Hokuto or Sara in the story, because those names weren't the names Tsugumi had given them. Someone else had named them Hokuto and Sara. I left Tsugumi and Sara. If I could, I wanted to stay with them forever, but it wasn't possible. There were still many unsolved matters that I needed to take care of. Listening to Tsugumi's story had caused me to suddenly remember something. I had received a phone call before coming to Lemu. Over the phone, a voice had said to me, "If you come to Lemu, you can see your mother and sister." Oh, so that was it. Before the accident took place, I had been waiting for someone at the rest area. It must have been my mother and Sara. Tsugumi must have been roped into coming to Lemu the same way I was. Wait, roped in? What for? I still didn't know the answer to that, but I had some clues. The voice on the phone had been male. Without a doubt, I knew whose voice it had been. It's the fake Takeshi. I ran to him. You. You aren't Takeshi Kurinari. Barging into the rest area demanded an answer from the man in front of me. I couldn't call him Takeshi anymore. This guy had been deceiving us the whole time.
何を突然わけのわからんことを。
Look, I don't have a clue what you're talking about. Don't play dumb. I know that the real Takeshi is Sara and my father.
お父さん？俺がお前とサラの？
Father? Me? You and Sara's? No, not you. Sara and I are the children of Takeshi and Tsugumi.
俺とつぐみ。
Wait, so Tsugumi and I keep telling you, you are not Takeshi. I'm talking about Takeshi from the other world.
別の世界？なんじゃそりゃ。
Other world? What the heck's that supposed to mean? The world back in 2017.
2017年ね。
2017, huh?
お前が生まれたのはいつだったっけ？
And when were you born? January 21st, 16 years ago.
西暦で言うと？
In what year? In 2018.
なるほど。
I see.
じゃあどうしてお前は2017年の世界のことなんか知ってるんだ？
So how could you possibly know what happened in 2017? I don't know, I just do. What do you expect me to do about it? Besides, we're not talking about me now. Who are you anyway? And why did you lie about the year 2017? Why are you pretending to be Takeshi Kuranari? What was the reason you tried to trick us by repeating the same incident as 17 years ago and by using the same words?
騙す。騙すね。
To trick you, huh?
少年、よく考えてみろよ。
Think twice, will you, kid?
俺がもしも仮に2017年の出来事を繰り返してるとしてもだ。
For instance, if I was repeating the incident in 2017,
2018年に生まれたお前のことを騙せるはずがないだろ？
how could I possibly trick you who were born in 2018?
現実的に考えれば、17年前と同じことが起きていると、お前に信じ込ませることは不可能なんだよ。
Practically speaking, it's impossible to trick you into believing the same incident from 17 years ago is taking place when you intentionally gave me amnesia.
わかるか？
Did you get it?
それより、どうして同じ出来事だとわかる？
Besides, how could you tell if it was the same incident?
どうして同じ言葉を言っているとわかる？
How could you tell that I'm using the same phrase?
どうしてお前は自分が生まれる前の歴史なんかを知ってるんだ？
How could you know the history before you were even born?
そろそろ正体を表したらどうなんだ？
Why don't you appear your true self?
お前は一体何者なんだ？
Who are you anyway? Somehow I couldn't say a word. Who am I anyway? The same question was repeated in my mind.
そうかそうか。自分の話になると突然だんまりですか。
Oh, I see. When it comes to your story, you clam up, huh?
わかったよ。
All right then.
だったらまずは俺の本当の名前を教えてやろう。
I'll tell you my real name.
そう。お前が言ったように、俺は倉成武ではない。
Yes, as you said, I am not Takeshi Kuranari.
俺の本当の名前は、
My real name is
冠城。
Kaburaki.
冠城良吾。
Ryogo Kaburaki.
冠城良吾。
Ryogo Kaburaki.
思い出したんだ。僕の名前。
Not even close to guessing it. Not even. Wow. Oh, that would have been obvious. Like, it's like the two people, you have no idea who they are. You have like the random, like they're two random people. You're trying to figure out what they're gonna do with the twist they're gonna pull with them. Ooh. The kid repeated it slowly.
句は古い木。涼しい剣。
Ryogo Kaburaki. Ryogo Kaburaki. Oh, so I see. Way to go. I smiled and patted his head. The young Kaburaki smiled shyly. Without a word, the young Kaburaki went behind the statue and started scratching. He had a screwdriver in his hand. Ryobo Kaburaki. With thin, sharp writing, the young Kaburaki carved his name deeply into the statue. He must have been pretty happy to have remembered his name. Or was it that he wouldn't forget it again? Although I didn't know the reason, he carved his name into the statue. He continued on. Without stopping his hands, he also carved the following letters. Koko Yagami. Yubisai Harukana Tanaka. Tsugumi Komachi. Yeah, that's Tsugumi's last name. She mentioned it in like her flashback, but like I forgot it. Sora Akane Saki. Takeshi Kuranari. Pipi and Chami. The young Kaburaki carved all of our names who had been confined here. He smiled happily after finishing up. Well, there's a san there. It's about there up. There's a middle, in between middle. This looks kind of like tree, a bit. This looks like the number 3. Although I think that's supposed to be Chami. Now this is Koko. This is the hiragana. Is me 3? The statue kept silent with its hand on the chest. The boy's name was also Ryogo Kaburaki, which meant that the kid from the 17 years ago and this guy pretending to be Takeshi were actually the same person? He looked so young that it was hard to believe it had been 17 years. The young Kaburaki was 15 years old. That would make him 32 years old in this world. But the Kaburaki I spoke to looked about around 20. There was no way he could have been over 30 years old. Which meant, before I realized that the man who called himself Kaburaki had disappeared. He had left a while before. Is Cure? He got Cure because he got the antibodies. Oh, okay. I've been standing there lost in thought for some time. I remember back in the scene of 2017, which I had just witnessed earlier. I went over to one of the statues as if being called over to it. On its back were carved childish stick figures. 6 human-like figures and 2 unfamiliar animal shapes are drawn there. What? I looked at the statue. The statue pointed south. I looked back at the other statues as well. Surprisingly, there were similar drawings on the statue pointing to the sky. There was also 6 people's names, and as well as Pipi and Chami carved into the statue which stood with its hand on its chest. There was no writing on the statue pointing east. Oh, just what is this supposed to mean? What's up with this world, anyway? Puzzled and confused, my head felt like it was about to explode. I didn't know things that I was supposed to know. I knew things that I wasn't supposed to. That must be why my head is so confused. I still haven't recalled any of my memories. Some parts of it had come back, but nothing really important. To begin with, I still didn't know what kind of person this Hokuto was. At the same time, I knew that I wasn't supposed to know, and I could see what I wasn't supposed to see. For instance, the world 17 years into the past, about the legend of Pygmalion, Antif Below virus, the Cure virus, Pipi and Chami. I knew about all of them now. I knew exactly what had happened during the dramatic escape 17 years ago, and what happened on May 6th and 7th, and the world of 2034. I could sense even the different history flows in my world, in this world. I knew about escaping using the principle of a siphon, and about swimming to the ocean's surface from 104 feet under the water. The third eye, blink winkle. Those words were clear in my head. And then I remembered running into Miss Tanaka on the floating island. Or maybe more precisely, I should say, I could see it rather than I remember it. Anyway, I saw her, the woman who is called Miss Tanaka, Yubisai Akikana's mother, meaning she was actually Yubisai Harukana. Although their relationship defied the norm, still Yubisai Harukana and Yubisai Akikana were mother and daughter. Pieces of my thoughts scattered. I tried gathering them and struggling to come up with some kind of conclusion. It's 2034 now, and Koko was in 2017. I whispered to confirm the facts. Yes, that's right. It was 2034 now. That's why Tsugumi had been so suspicious of us. Because the same thing that happened 17 years ago is repeating. How about the others? Since Yubi Sayaki Kana had been one 17 years ago, she couldn't possibly have known about the incident. And since Sora hadn't been born yet, she wouldn't know either. Sora, being AI, couldn't lie, and she didn't seem to be lying either. Well, that only left Kaburaki. Did that mean Kaburaki was the mastermind behind the whole incident in 2034? Nope, too soon. There had been two others who had survived the incident 17 years ago. Yubisai Harukana and Koko. And we know Yubisai Harukana has something to do with it because she rescues them. On May 6, 2017, Kaburaki, Yubisai Harukana, and Koko had been infected with the Teeth Blue virus and had been rescued by the mini-sub which came to the pool in IBF. Oh wait, how did the three of them recover from the virus after they'd been infected? Because of the injection of antibodies made by Tsugumi's blood? But Koko hadn't received the antibodies, because she had been under high-pressure oxygen treatment in the capsule pod at the time. Huh? No, even before that. Yubisai Harukana suffered from critical heart disease, right? But Yubisai Harukana is still alive and well now. What's going on here? Because the antibodies, they got the cure. Both Takeshi, as in whatever his name is, the kid, I forget the name already. These names aren't very Kaburaki. Kaburaki and Yubi got the cure virus, so he didn't age past 5 years after his age. Yubisai Harukana got the cure virus. That cured her heart condition somehow. Koko did not get the cure virus and should now be a 31-year-old woman. I guess there's just one answer. It's the only explanation. Yubisai Harukana and Kaburaki must have been infected with the cure virus. Their bodies must have had repeated 5 years worth of cell division. And when all their DNA had stopped replacing, they stopped aging. They must have been why they looked younger than their real age. And Yubisai Harukana's heart disease would have been fixed by the cure virus. But still, is that really what happened? In a different history flow, Kaburaki couldn't see the image in the pennant. If she wasn't lying or acting, she must not have possessed infrared vision. And although I didn't have proof, my instincts told me Yubisai Harukana didn't possess infrared vision either. Then again, in the world of 2017, Tsugumi and I mentioned she was special among carriers of the cure virus. Perhaps she was a rare example of DNA replacement that had taken place safely over the whole body. That meant Yubisai Harukana and Kaburaki were not complete cure then. But it didn't seem to me that they could be any such thing as incomplete cure. It's no use. I can't figure it out. But I still had far serious matters to deal with. I need to think about this problem first. The problem was, how was I able to sense incidents that had taken place before I was born, or in a separate time continuum, because you have some sort of EPS resonance with and why is the same accident at 17 years earlier taking place again? It couldn't have been a coincidence. Obviously someone had planned it. There was only one clue. Koko. I wanted to see Koko. I felt that Koko would know everything there was to know about this incident, but how could I find Koko who seemed to just pop up randomly? Oh, I know. I had sudden inspiration. I had a hunch. At this hour on the 5th, Koko would show up in the Cosmic Whale Room.
ねえねえ、クジラさん、クジラさん。
And at that I'll end. Well, yeah. Not very many choices there. Ooh, ooh. Oh. There's the last one for you. Kiryu. Last two for Tsugumi. Sora has one left. Coco has Minnie left. Nine scenes left. 13 paths left. 114 of whatever this is left. Still don't have this. Thinking it's a cryo freeze, just my theory. This is probably when you go with you instead of with Sarah to the warehouse. 4DBW. What in the world? 4D blue whale? Oh, time traveling whale. Huh. 7 more scenes to go. Till we get to the end here.